Is Shrek 4Ever After the worst Shrek product to be released in the nearly 25 years of the franchise's existence? With Shrek 5 on the horizon, it might have the title taken from it, but I still have hope it will be the Fiona-centric movie I've been waiting for. Hello, welcome, take a seat. We are getting back into this Shrek deep dive series where I analyze the characters, themes, and development of the Shrek franchise. And today we are finally going to be getting into Shrek 4Ever After. This is the only mainline Shrek movie that I've only ever seen once, and that was back when it came out in theaters back in 2010. So rewatching this film felt like watching it for the first time. I do distinctly remember not liking this movie when it first released. I hated the idea of Shrek reverting back to his old ways and making a deal we all know he damn well knows he shouldn't be making. But as far as how I feel about it now, well, I can see moments of great storytelling and can respect the homage paid to the 1946 film It's a Wonderful Life. But I still very much do not like this movie. Listen, I tried to come to this movie with an open heart. I tried to see the forest for the leaves. But this movie, it is not for me. While writing this script, I had to watch the legendary Schaefer-less Shrek 4Ever After video to maybe help write this script with more grace than what my notes are currently giving me. And trust me, I try to avoid watching other reviews and story explanations because I don't want to accidentally/subconsciously rehash what that person says in their video. But I needed a different perspective, or else this video would be nothing but me ranting about this movie for the next 20 or so minutes. Which brings me how I'm going to be organizing this video, as it will be drastically different and much shorter than what my Shrek videos tend to be. I'll start with production, as I always do, but from there I'm going to skim over the plot and give you the main story beats instead of my usual comb through of every scene. Then I'll highlight the better scenes before diving into what I severely dislike about this movie. So without further ado, spoiler warning for Shrek 4Ever After. The production. There are reports that Shrek 4 was planned way back in 2004, after the roaring success of Shrek 2, with Jeffrey Katzenberg having a vision of the franchise stretching across 5 total movies. This plan would be eventually scrapped in 2007, with Katzenberg seeing Shrek 4Ever After as the finale to this series, after seeing how the script for the movie was playing out. As many of you know, Shrek 5 has been announced and is slated to release next year. Whether this is a reboot of the series as a nostalgic cash grab, the newest closing chapter to the franchise, or a faithful continuation of the story, we will find out. Either way, it seems like Illumination didn't get Katzenberg's memo that Shrek 4Ever After was supposed to be the last Shrek movie. You can hear my cat purring. He insisted on being as close to me as possible while I'm recording this. The script was in development back in 2005 with Tim Sullivan as the lead writer, before he was replaced by Darren Lemke and Josh Klausner. And in 2007, Katzenberg announced that Shrek 4 would be the prequel to the first movie, showing us how Shrek originally made it to his swamp, which we could see hints of that being the case in the third movie, with Puss, Donkey, and several of the fairy tale gang talking about their time as adolescents. However, this idea was scrapped somewhere along the way, with the introduction of the idea that this movie would pay homage to, or parody, It's a Wonderful Life, though less parody, more homage. This movie also pays homage to all of the films that came before it, with Bill Damaski explaining in 2009 that several bits from the first films would reappear in this film, such as Shrek telling the villagers to run and Fiona blowing up a bird with her singing, which I will talk about in the final section of this video. Shrek 4Ever After was met with very mixed reviews, some praising it for its dedication to continuing Shrek's story and developing Fiona as a tragic but powerful character, while others found it to be an unfunny rehashing of played-out tropes. What I mean by this is, by the time Shrek 4 came out, there had already been several movies and TV shows that have already explored this what-if scenario, like the 2000 film The Family Man, the 1998 film Sliding Doors, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode in 1998, The Wish, and an episode of Friends in 1999 titled The One That Could Have Been, just to name a few. So it wasn't the most groundbreaking idea. Even several superhero comics and animated shows had also covered this idea of what if, like the Teen Titans episode from 2004 titled How Long Is Forever? Such a good episode. But money doesn't really lie. The people who get money lie, but money doesn't. And Shrek 4Ever After did make DreamWorks some big numbers in the box office. Though not as much as they originally anticipated, it was the 10th highest grossing film of 2010, making roughly $752 million worldwide. Shrek 4Ever After was released in theaters on May 21st, 2010, and that's where this story truly begins. Now let's get into the plot. Like I've mentioned, this movie follows the formula of the 1946 film It's a Wonderful Life, but completely Shrekified. We return to original form, with the storybook being opened and read to the audience by an unknown voice. This would be Rumpelstiltskin, who is our antagonist of the movie. We also get a flashback to events that happened in Far, Far Away, right after Fiona was rescued, with Fiona's parents desperate to lift the curse on their daughter, meeting Stiltskin in a witch's camp, ready to make a deal. I really love the reference to King Midas in this scene. He's the one who recommended Stiltskin to Fiona's parents. And it's great foreshadowing to how devious Stiltskin's deals are, as anyone who knows the story of King Midas knows how his daughter's story ends. But before they could sign on the dotted line, one of their guards informs them that Fiona had been rescued, and they rip Stiltskin's contract in half. We then see our hero's montage, or a version of the hero's montage that has a very drastic tonal shift from what we've seen before. Shrek and Fiona have become very domestic in their day-to-day routine, waking up, taking care of their kids with the help of Puss and Donkey, and living out their lives as parents. This sequence plays out over several days. We can also see the cracks in this idealized post-happily ever after life. Shrek has no time to be himself, to be by himself. The kids, or Fiona, or Puss, or Donkey, are always in his face, calling his name and knocking his eyeball martini out of his hands. This all culminates with the kids' first birthday party. I genuinely hate this scene. It's not poorly made or anything. In fact, it's very effective in what it's setting out to be. Shrek is overstimulated at the party. Everyone from Donkey to strangers are in his face. No one is helping him. And most of the fairy tale crew are actually actively getting in his way and ruining things. And there's this obnoxious kid telling Shrek to do the roar, while his Karen of a dad is being the most entitled individual and whining at Shrek to do this for his kid. I wanted to use other language in that last sentence, but I'm afraid that this video will get very quickly demonetized if I used any other verbiage. And I get it, some people find this kid and his dad funny, and there is something genuinely funny about the kid grabbing his dad after Shrek roars and says, "I love you, daddy!" But up until that point, I want to punt that brat right in his dad's... Well, again, can't finish that sentence without this video getting flagged. Anyways, Shrek snaps and punches the birthday cake before storming out of the room. Fiona follows him, and instead of asking what's wrong, like a good spouse would, she calls his actions ridiculous and childish. Shrek breaks down, confessing how confused and hurt he is, how he's not sure of his place in his own life anymore, and wishing things were simple again. And Fiona finishes his sentence for him. "Back before you rescued me from the tower?" Exactly! And Fiona, reasonably upset, snaps back at Shrek, basically calling him pathetic before she goes back inside. Meanwhile, we see that Stiltskin has been listening this entire time, and he begins to scheme. Shrek storms away from the party, ranting to himself, when he hears Stiltskin crying out for help. And Shrek, being the hero he's always been, begrudgingly goes to save the day. Stiltskin was never in trouble, which is obvious to the audience, but not to Shrek because he's still lost in his own grumblings. And then Stiltskin offers Shrek some food and an eyeball martini, which Shrek doesn't turn down. I totally get it. I can't wait to be done recording so I can lounge in full face of makeup while drinking my own eyeball martini. Eventually, Stiltskin brings up his powers, his ability to make reality warping deals, and offers Shrek the opportunity to be an ogre again for a day, like he used to. Shrek declines at first, knowing there would be a catch. But Stiltskin reassures him he would just be losing a day from his childhood, a day he doesn't even remember. And when the day is over, He will poof right back to today and no one the wiser. Shrek agrees and signs the paper. And he does get his day of chaos, running rampant in the village while laughing the entire time, until he makes it back to his swamp, and is no longer the place he once called home. It's dried up, a husk of its former self, and Shrek realizes something is very, very wrong. But he doesn't have time to worry about it as some witches arrive and attack him, capturing him. He wakes up and finds himself in a caged carriage being drawn by Donkey, who's being used as a radio station, so I guess the witches kind of made use of his singing abilities. Through his interaction with Donkey, who doesn't know who he is, Shrek realizes he made a mistake, which is further expanded upon once he makes it to Far, Far Away and sees the city in ruins. We see the fairy tale crew and many of the citizens of Far, Far Away are roughened, wild, or enslaved in some way. Then Shrek comes face to face with Stiltskin. Stiltskin explains, and Shrek realizes he took the day that Shrek was born. Therefore, Shrek never existed, so Fiona was never saved, and Stiltskin could trick her parents into signing over their kingdom to him, thus bringing us to this new dystopian era. And once the sun dawns on the next day, the contract would become permanent, and Shrek would cease to exist entirely. Gotta hand it to the little creep. He really ate with that plot. But Shrek, being the main character, is able to escape on a broomstick with Donkey. Once out of the castle, Shrek tries to convince Donkey that they are best friends, but Donkey doesn't believe him and runs away. Though, he comes back and overhears Shrek talking to himself, and then vaguely believes Shrek, especially after Shrek pulls out his contract with Stiltskin and shows it to Donkey. Donkey has learned a few things from his time with the witches and folds the contract, believing there is a hidden clause that would make the contract null and void. And he's right. True love's kiss will break the spell. Now, Shrek has a plan to find Fiona and make her fall in love with him again. He goes to her tower, thinking since he's never saved her, she would still be trapped there. But at some point, Fiona escaped by herself, and she's not there. Shrek sees a wall covered in tally marks, indicating how long Fiona had been waiting in that tower, and he is so sickened with himself for leaving her to that fate for so long. Losing hope and running out of ideas, Shrek tries to use Donkey as a bloodhound, which seems to work for a moment, but really Donkey is just smelling waffles. It's always waffles with him. It's a very obvious trap, but Donkey falls for it anyways, and he gets caught and dragged to a hidden encampment of ogres. There, they find Fiona, and she is leading the resistance against Stiltskin. Shrek tries to woo Fiona in several ways, getting her a box of slugs, giving her presents, and then eventually sparring with her. The fight is slow and badly animated, but it's a heartwarming moment that shows that the two of them are soulmates, the sparks between them getting Puss's attention. Puss is a chonky boy now, having become Fiona's lap cat at some point after her escape. This is partly a joke to show that Fiona has become a cat lady spinster, and as another joke that we'll talk about when we get to the bad section of this video. Fiona gets information that Stiltskin will be looking for Shrek himself and plans an ambush, but it's all a trick from Stiltskin, who sends the Pied Piper in his place. Shrek sneaks up on Fiona while she's on the lookout for Stiltskin's caravan. She almost clobbers him, but he slowly convinces her that he is who he says he is, through knowing truths about her. Then the ambush goes off without them, but the Pied Piper's music still ensnares them, and all of the ogres are now dancing. Puss and Donkey save Shrek and Fiona by bringing them as far from the Piper as they can. Stiltskin isn't happy that they got away. He unalives one of his witches, but he makes a new plan to get the disenfranchised masses to look for Shrek by offering them a deal to whoever turns Shrek in. Shrek hears this and turns himself in. In exchange, he gets all of the ogres out of the castle. All except for Fiona, because she's not a full ogre, as her curse hasn't been broken yet. Shrek and Fiona fall in love again in their captivity, and the ogres make a plan to Trojan horse their way into the castle. Another good Greek reference here. An epic fight happens, Dragon is being controlled by Stiltskin and makes an appearance, and this is probably the best 8 minutes of the whole movie. And then, Stiltskin is defeated. Shrek begins to disappear as the sun rises, and Fiona kisses him. He vanishes, but Puss realizes that Fiona doesn't turn back into a human with the sunlight, and she understands that she and Shrek shared true love's first kiss. And with that realization, Stiltskin's spell is broken. Shrek comes back to himself mid-roar at his kid's birthday party and realizes how good his life is. Lessons learned, movie's over. There is a dance party in typical Shrek fashion, but I'll discuss that in full in the second half of this video. But for now, the greater hits. Despite my issues with the movie, I was surprised to find quite a few moments that stood out, in a good way. There's not enough to redeem the whole film, but they're worth talking about. I want to talk about the comedy of the movie before we get into the emotional swings the movie takes, as it's pretty interesting to look at. This time around, humor takes a back seat. While there are, of course, jokes scattered throughout the movie, some even undercutting emotional beats, the movie is more concerned with its inner conflict. Shrek's emotional unraveling, Fiona's hardened survival, and the physical threat of Stiltskin himself. And I think this stems from the director's desire to pay homage to It's a Wonderful Life instead of parodying it. This may seem as a bad judgment call, as the bread and butter of Shrek is to parody and twist viewer expectations. But with this being the finale of the Shrek franchise, a more grounded story works to tie up loose ends. I wonder what this movie would have looked like if it had fully focused on these story beats instead of trying to make every other 5 minutes a joke. But I'll talk about all the missed potential in a moment. This section is for the good parts. Like Stiltskin as a villain. He's really good at being the villain. He's menacing, clever, manipulative, eccentric. His stature calls back to Farquaad's own Napoleon complex, but his level of evil and cunning matches that of FG's. And he is consistently evil. They almost never undercut his menace with jokes and gags, and if they do, it only adds to his unpredictability. Unlike Charming, whose menace was undercut left, right, and center, until he was nothing but the laughingstock of Far, Far Away. Then there's Shrek's development in this movie. Focusing on the highlights of his development, I want to point out the exploration into the human experience the movie is trying to do here through Shrek, especially within the first few minutes. It's almost as if he's having a midlife crisis, but instead of focusing on the dramatic cliches we tend to see men have in cinema, like buying hot rod cars, having affairs, or spending money they don't have on frivolous junk, we see Shrek become disillusioned. At the beginning of the cycle of his day-to-day sequence, we see he's genuinely happy with where he's at. His once empty dining room is now overflowing with friends and family, a touching callback to the lonely meal scene in the first film. It's an incredibly clever expansion on what we knew about Shrek's life before Fiona. But as each identical day passes, that joy begins to crack. His autonomy erodes, his boundaries disappear, and the things that once made him feel safe, like his roar, become cheapened. And that's how the movie invites the audience to explore what this disillusionment can do. Shrek becomes vulnerable. He relapses into his old ways. He doesn't see his roar as a victory like he once did. He sees it as a mark of failure. What kind of example is he leading for his kids? Or worse, he sees his roar as nothing but a cheap commodity for the humans around him, where it was once a safety net, a shield against the outside world. And in this vulnerable state, he is easy prey to Stiltskin's manipulations. This allows Stiltskin's victory over Shrek at the beginning to feel well earned. And a part of this victory is also incredible to look at, even though it's such a quick moment. When Stiltskin calls out for help from under his carriage, even though Shrek is pissed and cranky and just ranting about how he's an ogre and he won't apologize for being one, he proves himself wrong. He is more than just an ogre. He's a father, a best friend, a husband, and he's a hero. Yes, most of these new hats are feeling like a burden to him at this moment. He has to tackle so much and he's so tired. Let my man rest. But they have all become integral parts of his being. He is no longer just a selfish, mean, territorial ogre. Even at his core, that's not the only title he embodies. And it's so moving to see this moment and understand it as the reckoning Shrek has with himself. He even sighs in exasperation with himself. It's so good. Speaking of so good, the use of the shoe-tying rhyme is a surprisingly elegant thread. What starts as a throwaway moment between Shrek and his kids evolves into a bonding moment with Fiona, and eventually becomes the very move that defeats Dragon and Stiltskin. It's smart, subtle storytelling, and a rare example of payoff done right in this movie. And now I want to talk about the best part of the whole fucking movie, and that's Fiona's development. Without Shrek, Fiona loses her faith in the fairy tale ideal. She no longer believes in a happily ever after. She saves herself from the tower and eventually becomes a ruler of her own making, a revolutionary. She develops her badass side, a part of her that's been lacking in the past couple of movies, despite the first movie establishing that she is a powerful and capable fighter. And maybe Shrek wouldn't have been a very good king, but Fiona would have made an irreplaceable queen of Far, Far Away. And this movie proves it. She's as cunning as any of the villains we've seen so far, and her compassion keeps her beloved by the ogres of the camp. She is so cool in this movie. I love her. Well, I love this part of her. I don't like the beginning of the movie her. That one needs some work. And what I love most about her development is we finally get solid evidence of how difficult and scary being in that tower was for her. The tally marks in her bedroom being the first thing the movie introduces. We've had only speculation on how long Fiona had been in the tower before this movie. And while we don't know if she's tallying days, weeks, or months, the impression of it being a very long time is confirmed. But I think it's during the ambush that we truly understand what Fiona was put through, with Shrek listing all of the things that only he could know about her. And one of them being that Fiona needs to sleep with a candle lit in the room, because she is still afraid, both in this reality and in her happily ever after with Shrek, that when she wakes up, she will be back in that tower. It's so heartbreaking. And the final thing I thoroughly enjoyed about this movie is how it explores true love as something to be earned, not something that is predestined. Shrek's goal after finding out about Stiltskin's loophole is to simply have Fiona kiss him. He believes that true love is predestined because all the fairy tales say it is. But when nothing happens after he finally convinces Fiona to kiss him, that proves to the audience that this world isn't that type of fairy tale. It's a powerful subversion. True love isn't destiny, it's time spent together, memories and sparks made. Their first kiss fails because there's no shared history yet, at least not on Fiona's part. The second kiss works not because it's magic, but because it's earned, because Shrek proves through action and sacrifice why Fiona loved him in the first place. And finally, the only moment I really like from the pre-credit dance party is when Queen Lillian is dancing with a very large and hunky ogre. Like, yes, Queen, get it. Everything else, well, let's get into the bad. The grand misses. Despite a promising setup and some truly heartfelt character beats, Shrek 4Ever After squanders its final chapter status with lazy formulas, botched character arcs, and comedy that aged like lemon-flavored yogurt. First, I want to ask, does anyone else find the animation to be worse? This is the first movie that DreamWorks didn't get help from their friends over at Pacific Data Images, and it shows. The horses in the opening scene, along with the witches and cats in Stiltskin's shanty village, look off and unimaginative. I mean, this is the franchise that made one of the cutest animated cats ever, Puss in Boots, and they make this thing? Yes, the camera angles and rotating visual scenes add gravitas and are a step up from the older movies, especially for the final battle against Stiltskin, but the texture, the lighting, the basic movements of the models have taken a fatal hit in turn. And the sparring match between Shrek and Fiona is very subpar. We've seen better fight scenes in the first movie when Fiona was kicking ass against Robin Hood and his crew of merry perverted men. Again, they make up for this moment with the gorgeous final battle sequence, but even the ogres dancing during the failed ambush had plenty of good movements in it, and that was a joke. Meanwhile, they give the moment of Shrek and Fiona falling in love again a boxing match sequence that's outclassed by a 1980s Rock'em Sock'em Robots toy. And continuing to look at the opening scene, I don't like that we get a departure from the established canon that Fiona's parents were neglectful people. Them being willing to sign over their rights to the kingdom for the curse on their daughter to be lifted doesn't make any sense. If they miss her, why not just bring her home? Who says she needs to sit in a tower guarded by a dragon in order to find true love? I mean, obviously it was FG who put that idea into their head so that she could establish her magnum opus, Happily Ever After, and break Fiona's spirit so she could fall in love with Prince Charming upon rescue. But Harold and Lillian trying to find outside help makes FG's manipulation seem less effective. I know the birthday party is a highlight for a lot of people, and it does a lot of work to show Shrek's mental decline, But this scene made me want to scream and turn off the movie. And I will say, maybe that emotional reaction is a bonus to the movie, but I personally hated it. I feel so bad for Shrek. The overstimulation of the kid's birthday party, that Karen of a dad who feels so entitled to Shrek's time, that insufferable little brat who kept saying, "Do the roar." Literally everyone in that place is being a complete jerk or treating Shrek like an asshole. I wouldn't have been able to keep my composure either. And I'm so disappointed in Fiona throughout all of this. She acknowledges that he's being overstimulated, but doesn't do anything to intervene. And when Shrek finally breaks, she follows him just to berate him. Yes, it's their kid's first birthday, but everyone was being in Shrek's face. Everyone was pushing his buttons. And he's been a sideshow attraction for some of these people for almost a year now. This is a full departure from the Fiona that we saw in the second movie, where she was a reassuring hand and an understanding shield for Shrek. Fiona does make valid points. There is something to be said about Shrek's life now versus what it was before. He has friends and family and love in his life, something that was severely lacking before he met Fiona and Donkey. But now all of his boundaries, his safety nets, are being taken away from him one at a time until he has nothing left. Yes, maybe he should be grateful for his life, but him wanting to establish some sort of support system for himself is being treated like he wants to murder a village. He might want to murder a village at this moment, but that's not the point here. Fiona dismisses his feelings and weaponizes her own trauma to invalidate his, an approach that feels more like character assassination on her part. Shrek falling into the same mistake he made in the second movie, looking for magical solutions to his problems instead of facing it head on with open and honest conversation, is disappointing. Like I said in my Shrek 2 deep dive, open and honest conversation doesn't make for good action comedy cinema, but doing the exact same thing feels a bit lazy on the writer's part, I'm just saying. This is supposed to be the final chapter of the Shrek story. We could have departed from the same song and dance we've seen before. Though I will give credit where credit's due, Shrek has run away from his problems in the first movie, looked for magical solutions in the second movie, and went on a grand boys trip in the third. There isn't much else they could have done with him that wouldn't mirror some formulas we've seen before. And the magical twist and time shenanigans are pretty out there. With that said though, I don't like the bare bones formula of this movie. It's convoluted, sure, but it's also basic in its setup. The hero wishing they were never bored and seeing how much better the world is because they existed is a good message, but it's also very contrived. Again, they are paying homage to a movie that is 70 years old at the point of development. And seeing how the villains would have destroyed the world without that one person always kind of feels like a circle jerk of self-indulgence. Not saying this is what Shrek is doing or that's the general vibe of this movie, but it's hard to separate that feeling from stories like this. A small detail that I noticed during the scene when Shrek realizes he messed up, when he comes across his swamp and it's a dried up dirt mound, Shrek doesn't call out for his kids, just Fiona, which is weird. Especially because within 10 minutes he's looking at the doll that his daughter Felicia gave him and starts crying. Like, where's the continuity here? Does he regret his wish because his kids are gone or not? Like, pick a lane, please. And now I want to talk about the bad parts of the comedy in this movie. And it's kind of a lot, guys. It's very much a relic of its era. They rely heavily on the XD so random culture of its time. Shrek and Donkey switching places on the broom. The do the roar kid was supposed to be comedic. I get that. And I remember thinking it was funny when I was 14, so I guess. And Donkey saying he's not a bloodhound, but then ends up being a bloodhound, but then we find out that it's just waffles. And then there's Cookie's chimichanga stand. Eddie Murphy is certainly carrying the comedy on his back in this movie, as Shrek is less than his normal witty self, Fiona is a brutalist, and Puss is rendered to a very lazy fat cat joke. Speaking of jokes that did not age well, Cookie feels like they were trying to go for a sassy gay character with their design. Even their earring is in their left ear, which was a typical styling choice for that era of pop culture to show that someone was queer. But since Cookie lacks any depth of character, doesn't have any explicit moment where his queerness is confirmed, and their queerness is used as a laugh instead of being grounded in anything serious, it reads as tokenism, not representation. They rely heavily on stereotypes instead of anything meaningful, and that's a problem. Continuing to look at the comedic moments, The gag with the Pied Piper making the witches dance was funny, but rehashing it during the ambush scene kind of takes all of the fire out of the tension that this scene is supposed to be doing. And again, we see Cookie being a bad token gay character by ignoring the danger he's in and getting into the groove of dancing. It's weird. And then they kill Gingy for a fat joke. Of all things, Puss eats him because he can't help himself around food? If it was one of the blind mice, that would have been a great callback to the second movie. But Gingy is one of the most beloved and most quoted characters from the movies. And to kill him off in a very out-of-touch lark is highly distasteful. Going back to the ogre camp scene, I think there was a huge missed opportunity for the movie to explore community as a theme in this movie. They hint at this when Shrek enters the ogre camp. You can see the wonder on his face, the desire to be a part of this life. And it would have been a brilliant thread that connected his need for real connection and support outside of his family if they had followed through with this idea. It's one of the only moments where Shrek looks at something with awe. It speaks to anyone who has ever known what it feels like to be ostracized due to how they were born, and then finding the community that they never had before. As a gay kid, I know this feeling, and the first time I went to a pride festival or a gay nightclub was the same emotion I saw on Shrek's face when entering the camp. And that would have been awesome and powerful to witness as focus in this movie, or even as a continual fleshed out thread. And then they throw the entire sentiment away when he sees Fiona and she kicks him in the face and we get back to the convoluted fucking plot. And it would have been amazing if they followed through on this concept of mutual estrangement, but they don't, and it's disappointing. And outside of the opening sequence, Gingy and the gang are even real characters in this movie, being pushed to the background as gags and examples of how Shrek gave them better lives than the ones they carry without him ever existing. The whole movie is filled with missed opportunities and half-baked concepts, like Fiona being a leader. We see how competent she is. She's garnered the respect of 100 ogres. Her combat instincts are at their height. She is willing and capable to lead this army, and is not given enough time to marinate. And Shrek finding a community he can connect with on a deeper level than just a ragtag team of misfits he found in the other movies. Then the dissection of how friendships morph over time would have been so cathartic for many viewers who grew up with this franchise, who might have been in the middle of their own friend group upheaval as they entered late-stage adolescence. These themes are all presented and then shoved to the side, and what is truly disappointing is, with these themes, if explored with any amount of depth, could have made this a movie of the ages. They could have had such a good movie here. Shrek listing everything he knows about Fiona was such a sweet moment, and it's happening at the worst time because there's supposed to be an ambush happening right now. It feels so out of place and backwards, and the writers had to do it because Shrek is on such a tight time frame. Why couldn't the focus of the movie be Shrek's disillusionment, his desire for real community, and Fiona tackling her traumas? Exploring Fiona's desire for family time, to reclaim what she lost in those years in the tower, would have been a lot better than simply having her be awful to Shrek and him falling back onto magical solutions to fix his problems only to cause more problems. Luckily, that's the last terrible thing that this movie does before the finale dance party, which I will finally get into. This scene made me feel physically unwell after finishing it. Fiona explodes Stiltskin's goose, his longtime companion, in a burst of body horror, and everyone points and laughs at him. It's as cruel as anything FG did, and is on par with the mama bear skin rug on Farquaad's floor, and it feels completely out of place in a movie that's supposed to be centered around love and redemption. This was not the way the final chapter of the Shrek story should have ended, unless they were doing a spoof on the you either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain trope, but since that isn't explored anywhere else in the movie, I have to mark it as a gross joke made by the creators for the XD so random nonsense they try to emulate in the movie. There was so much potential in this movie, with themes of disillusionment, redemption, community, and what it means to fight for yourself and the ones you love. This could have been a movie to rival Shrek 2 in its underlying messages. But with everything being buried under poorly played out or even completely out of touch jokes, recycled arcs, and surprisingly mean-spirited moments, it's a disappointment. And maybe that sucks even more. Anyways, sorry to end this part of the Shrek analysis series on such a rueful note. I tried to come at this movie with an open heart, and I'm glad I did because I got to see some of the better qualities this movie had under its surface. But its glaring weaknesses were still too much for me. A bad movie is a bad movie. Sometimes they can be so bad that they circle back around to being good. But I hate missed potential, and that's what this movie seems to be built on. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking with me. I'd love to know what you thought of Shrek 4Ever after. Did you love it? Hate it? Are you also traumatized and ill-stricken by the bird explosion? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I had planned to do a live-action Cat in the Hat analysis, which I had to stop after 15 minutes of watching the movie because I thought my brain was going to explode without my laptop in front of me to write down the notes. And then I'll dive into the Puss in Boots movies shortly after. Keep a lookout for those videos. And if you want something a little different, I just posted a deep dive of South of Midnight, a game that explores generational trauma, Southern folklore, and the weight of what it means to love. Anyways, I'll finish this story later.